Hello, it's Wednesday. It's the Happy Healthcare Professionals live show. I hope you guys are well this week. I'm really excited to bring you tonight's show. This show is really for anyone in pharmacy or in healthcare that it wants to be inspired, wants to be motivated, wants to have ideas about what to do in your career. And that's what I want to do through this show. I want to inspire you and hopefully spark some ideas in terms of what you can do with your career. And tonight's show is no exception. If you don't know who I am, let me introduce myself. My name is Komal. I'm a former national level pharmacist turned pharmacy career change coach. And I absolutely love helping pharmacy professionals to reinvent their careers, to create careers and lives that are fulfilling, that are full of freedom and that are full of flexibility, and really become that happy healthcare professional again, because that's what we all intend on being. So tonight's show, I have got such an amazing pharmacist who is joining us. I've got Urvi. She is the pharmacy lead at NHS Highlands, and she's also a fashion designer. She's had an incredible career, really spanning many years in pharmacy, but also having done a degree in fashion design. And she's now a jewellery designer as well. And so she's been able to create this life and this career that really spans both her creative side and her scientific side. And that is what I find so intriguing. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Urvi on the screen now. Hi, Urvi.
Hi. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Life is good. It's the hour, the clock's turning back has definitely helped here. We're getting much longer days, which is really nice.
Yeah. I can imagine. So I really want you to tell us about, I guess, start from the beginning. Like tell me about, how did you get into pharmacy?
I got into pharmacy, if I'm being honest, because I didn't have parental permission to do fashion, if I'm being honest. So we're both from an Asian background. I'm first generation. We're from a background where our parents have worked really hard to establish a life for themselves here. And obviously, when I turned around to my Asian parents and said, "Oh, I want to go and study fashion," it was like, no, that's a hobby. That's not something you turn into a career. And so I knew where they were coming from. And looking back, I think it was I kind of lucked out that life worked out for me that way in one sense, because I've always got this really sturdy career to kind of fall back on. But I went that, studying pharmacy was almost like it was the other option. But the whole time I was studying, I knew I had a calling to do something creative. I'd done my RAS level, and it was just a case of how I could do it. So, at uni, that went from organizing pharmacy balls, where I paid so much attention to all the decor and all the creative parts of what I was doing, and I was doing making courses, all sorts of things on the side that still allowed me to be creative while I was studying pharmacy. But once I started my course, I kind of realized I did actually really have a passion for it, and that passion came from I really care about my patients. I really care about helping people, and that was the big thing that really kept me in pharmacy and has kept me going. I definitely think I'm a bit of a science geek as well, so that helps.
Your experience of like being creative and also having that scientific head, I can so relate to that, because when I was at school, I absolutely loved art, and I was really good at it as well. And I remember going to the careers advisor at school and saying, I really enjoy art and I love languages, but I really like science. And I was like, what do I do with these subjects that I really love? And I remember she turned around to me, she said, you should be a counselor. And I was just like, really? I don't
How do those
understand how
two go
this.
together? Yeah,
I've
that
got
is
no
really
idea
random.
how those things go together. But I think we think of our careers very linearly, don't we?
Yeah, yes,
You
we
know,
do.
yeah,
And I think at the end of the day, we are always shown linear progression. Like anyone who works in hospital, you're always taught you're a 6, you have to work up to a 7, then you work up to an 8, and that's that linear path you're kind of shown. Whereas I think in the last 10 years, definitely pharmacy is changing a lot as well, and people are starting to have more portfolio careers, really. And that is what I see myself doing now. I definitely do see myself as having more of a portfolio career. I really enjoy speaking. I really enjoy some of the coaching I do as part of jewelry making, and we'll come to that in a bit. But I don't see why you can't have transferable skills and why you have to be on a linear path. And actually, there's a lot of strength to be taken from going down these kind of, wiggly kind of paths where you go back and forth, because you take strengths from what you're learning, and you learn to think outside the box from a lot of other people, and that really can help you stand out where you are or in terms of what you're doing. And I think it gives you invaluable life skills that other people just don't get when they do follow kind of a linear path.
yeah. I really want to come back to this in a minute, but I want you to tell us about what happened when you became a pharmacist, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you had this real desire to do something creative. Tell me about that time. What happened and what did you end up doing?
So I think the reason I ended up eventually studying fashion is, if I'm being honest, I was doing a lot of junior pharmacist roles and I just wasn't feeling very challenged. They were great roles. I've worked in some great hospitals, I've done on calls, I've been a resident, I did all of that. And I think that's something I would touch on. If you're thinking of switching careers and you're quite early on right now in your career, get your foundation first. Like, really make sure you're a good pharmacist before you go on and move on and do other things, because that will really hold you in good stead. And that's what kept me coming back and forth, to be honest. And that's what, always had me being able to get a job in pharmacy, is the fact that I had a really good foundation. But yeah, I kind of was in a junior pharmacist position, and how I was telling you about the whole linear lifestyle. The hospital where I worked was very corporate, and it just felt very it felt like a rat race, if I'm being honest, and it felt very much like dog to get a promotion, and these people were my friends, and I wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't enjoying that, being pitted against kind of people that I really enjoyed working with. And I could see that, if I looked 40 years ahead, is this where I saw myself? And the honest answer was no. So I think you and I were talking about intuition in our intro call, and that is the first time I really think intuition hit for me, because it was a big calling to say, well, you're not happy, you can't see yourself doing this in 4 years, so why are you doing this? Like, what is the purpose? And if there is no purpose, then I'm hugely passionate about whatever I do, whatever I pick up, I will throw 120% into it. But I really have to believe in it. And I didn't believe in what I was doing at that point. So I applied, and I kind of left it all to the universe. I only applied for one course, which was the course I've always wanted to do. It was fashion design and marketing at the London College of Fashion. That was all I applied for in UCAS. I put all my cards on the table with them and said, I'm not applying for any other courses because you're really kind of where I want to come and study. And they have this kind of, the way they interview is actually quite overwhelming. They make you take a clear portfolio to your interview. You're sitting in a waiting room with 10 to 15 other people, and you can see their work.
Wow.
And that is quite intimidating, especially as a mature student, and I felt quite out of my depth at that point. I was a bit like, they're not going to want me. I'm like 6 years older than most of these students. What am I going to do? So I just kind of was like, I'm going to give it my best shot. And if it's meant to be, it will be. And I think that course had about 40 spaces. And they told us at the point of interview, there were over 1,000 people that they interviewed. 1,000 people that applied. So to get onto that course was a big deal. And I got on. So for me, that was like a big sign from the universe that this was something I was meant to do, and the whole process, I didn't tell my parents. I kind of hid it. I quit my job. I didn't tell my parents. And I remember I got in, I'd quit my job. And then I was like, so guys, I was living at home, you know, with them. I finished in 4 weeks. And they're like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I'm going to study fashion. And that did really create a lot of ruckus at home. I'm not going to lie, but there was still this thing in me that I was very determined that this was the thing I was meant to do. And I knew it. It was something I knew in my core. So I went to study fashion. That's what I did. It was like a foundation course. So it's a 2-year course. But I am so glad I went and formally studied to do that, because that course, the things I learned through that course, they were essential to me starting my own business. And that would be my second piece of advice. Whatever you choose to do, the same way you're a professional as a pharmacist, find some sort of professional route, or find some sort of professional qualifications or training, anything, whatever it is, but find ways that you're constantly building up your skill set. And we do that all the time, right? We do that with our CPD. Treat your other career the same way. What are you doing to constantly develop? It's really, really important. So I went off, studied, got engaged in that period. And when I came out the other side, I had, you know, the big Indian wedding that I needed to do. So fashion took, you know, a step back. I knew I'd done the course. I knew I wanted to kind of do fusion fashion. Jewellery wasn't even kind of there at that point. Mm-hmm. And I had a mortgage to pay. So I went back into pharmacy. I was locuming, and I got my first job as a 7 as a dispensary manager at Hammersmith. And that was intense. You know, that was we all know how busy dispensaries are. And that is a very, very busy dispensary. And it was a dispensary, you know, that I was then being asked to look at workflow and reorganizing things, retraining people, HR, which I'd never done. And again, this is where transferable skills come in. You know, I went and did all of those things, and those things helped me instead then when I set up my jewelry business, because I'd learnt about workflow, I'd learnt about HR, I'd learnt about people management. And again, it's an example of where you can keep, you know, transferring your skills back and forth.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's really great advice about, you know, firstly follow your intuition, because it tells you a lot, right? It normally will tell you the direction that you need to go in. And I think as pharmacists, because we're so much trained in the process that we forget to listen to our own intuition.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it takes real bravery, actually, Urvi, to be able to say to yourself, you know, to be in a position and say to yourself, I don't feel like this is the right place for me. And I know I've got to do something else. And that's a really brave step to take.
It is. And I think one of the things I wanted to actually say about intuition was, you're going to, you know, sometimes when we dream of things, right, they're big things. That's why they're called dreams. They seem out of reach. They seem like they're never going to happen for us. And there'll be a lot of people who tell you they won't happen for you, like you're not capable, or, you know, this is crazy. A lot of what you're hearing from people is their own fear-based reactions. It's because they can't imagine possibly having the courage to do those things. So really surround yourself with the right people. Listening to your intuition is, you know, it is a really hard thing to do, because a lot of the times it's telling us to do crazy things and we have no idea why. But learning to listen to it, and when you follow through on it, when I took my job up here as a locum, it wasn't because, you know, I was getting this amazing rate, or it wasn't because you know, I'd heard lots about this hospital. It was because my gut told me, and I made that decision in half an hour. You know, my recruiter gave me a job. He was like, I don't know if you're going to be interested in this, but I know you were saying I wanted a break from London at that point. He was like, this is really a break from London. And I went, yeah, I'll do it. And he was like, are you sure you haven't even thought about this? And I was like, no, because it felt right in my gut. I knew I needed to come up here. I didn't know why, but I knew my life was taking me in this direction. And the way it's unfolded in the last year has been amazing for me. So learning to listen to your gut is really, really important. And it's hard. It takes time to tune into it. but it's the biggest favor you can do to yourself.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So tell us about your business, like your jewelry business. How did that come about? Did you spend time away from pharmacy to focus on it? And what was that time like?
So when I started out, it was actually my side hustle. I kind of started it partway through my marriage, and unfortunately, I went through a really tough divorce, and I decided to separate from my husband. And when I separated, I didn't want that time to be something that I looked back on in my life and feel like it was a really negative period of my life. And I'm one of these people that I always need to be doing something. I always need to be feeling like I'm moving forwards. And getting divorced felt like a big step back. I moved back in with my parents. I lost my home. I was going through a really difficult divorce legally, and it felt like I'd stepped backwards in a lot of ways. So Trousseau became the thing that I worked on after, and I was still working as a pharmacist at Hammersmith in that time. And Trousseau became the thing that was my 6 to 2, basically. So I'd finish work, and a lot of the negative energy that I had, negative emotions, I had all this energy, but I didn't want to focus on the bad. I wanted to focus on something that I was building. And that was, because it felt like there was something, it was building blocks, whether it was just doing a photoshopping, an image, whatever it was, it felt like it was something I was building. And so that's where it started. It started in my parents' bedroom, in my parents' house. And it was at a period where I wasn't even looking to do jewelry. The jewelry started because I designed a piece of jewelry for a cousin's wedding. And when I was it was out in India, and the people that kind of made it for me were like, "You've got a real eye for this. You really know what you're doing." And I was like, I don't have any clue. I've never made jewelry. And they were very smart. They said, okay, take 40 pieces, just do something, do 40 pieces, take 40 pieces, sell or return. If you don't sell it, then don't worry about it. You can just return it to us. I sold those 40 pieces in 4 weeks. And then what I kept doing is reinvesting that money. So again, when you have a side hustle, keep something else going, keep other lines open in your business and other things that you can do. Because the reason I started the jewelry is I thought it would be like a one-stop shop, that people would come shopping for bridal wear, which was the thing that I really wanted to do at that point. And then, they'd pick up the jewelry and they'd do something else on the side as well. And it got to a point where I just kept reinvesting that money, and the jewelry took off quicker than the clothing did. And so that's what I stayed doing. And, at any point I was doing that across my job. But like I said, I was going through this really difficult point in my life. I started earning enough money with Trousseau that it was almost equivalent to my salary. And that was the thing that I had agreed with myself. That is when I would burn the boats and go all in. So that's what I did. I quit my job, which I wasn't happy at. I just was going through a really difficult point in life. And I don't think people really understood as much about mental health at that point as we do now. It wasn't recognized in the workplace. And I became, I went from being a really high achiever at work to kind of hitting here because I was putting so much energy into something else outside of work. And I think that's another piece of advice I would give is have something to lean on, but know when to let it go, because there has to be a point where you go all in. And the same way listening to your intuition is brave, burning your boats and going off to do this thing is brave as well. But if you believe in it, if you have a passion in it, you will make it work. So just know when it's time to let go. And there's no reason you can't come back. I came back, but just follow through and try and make the most of opportunities coming your way. So that's what I did. And talking about signs of, from the universe, my first month out of my job, I ended up doing something as part of London Fashion Week, which was the British Asian Fashion Week, and ended up with my first collection on the front page of Papers. And that was an amazing experience in itself as well, because it was a real, I think we all need validation, right? And for me, that was my point of validation, that, okay, I have made the right move. There is this talent that I have, or there is, this creative streak that I have that means something, because it was there in black and white. So look for those clues, you know, put the work in, but look for those clues and learn to really congratulate yourself on those things when they happen. Because I think when we're busy, when we get wrapped up in these things, we sometimes forget to do that and take that time out to do that for yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for being so vulnerable and talking about that experience in the way that you have, because, you know, I can't imagine that going through a divorce. I can't even imagine what that must have felt like and been like. And I think, you know, we all go through periods of time in our lives when we experience real heartache, you know, and real pain. And I think it's such an important point that you've raised about how we've got to be kind to ourselves during that time as well. And, you know, really kind of recognize what is bringing us joy, even if it is in the smallest of ways, right?
Yep.
You know, I mean, I've been through, you know, periods of time, like I lost my father to cancer, you know, and I was working then. I lost my father-in-law, you know, very unexpectedly, actually, after a couple of months of becoming engaged, actually. And that, you know, in those periods of time, I don't think we have, at the time, I don't think we understood as a collective, as, you know, even within our profession, we're not very good at really recognizing how these big events can impact people's lives. We kind of expect them to just carry on doing what they've been doing. And the reality is that those experiences knock you completely off kilter, and you need time to come back.
And if you don't, I think, I mean, if I'm being completely honest, I left my husband and I went into work the next day. And I think some of that comes from being Asian as well, right? You know, you're taught things get hard and you just carry on, you buckle down and you get on with it, and you know, life happens, you just have to carry on. But I remember I clear as day remember walking to that dispensary, telling my boss that I'd left my husband the night before because I was so conscious that I didn't want to make a mistake, and then being left in, you know, because everyone goes off to do their awards first thing, and just being left in this dispensary by myself, because I don't think, like I said, people were as aware about things like mental health, and just kind of just feeling like, oh my God, I'm going to get swallowed up here. I can't focus. Yeah. And if I had been kinder to myself, I probably wouldn't have turned up to work that day, and I probably shouldn't have, if I'm being honest. And I can look back on it and smile, but you know, you really do, like, you have to look after yourself, because if you don't look after yourself, you're not going to be good for anyone else, and you can't be useful for anyone else. So that's important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm so glad that you've raised that, because I think that so many people, you know, can relate to that. We can relate to that experience of just, you know, something major happens to us the next day, we're kind of like pretending like it didn't happen, you know. And it's like, and then it's like a few days pass by or a few weeks pass by, and it suddenly hits you like a ton of bricks. And you're like,
trauma's still sitting there, right? And,
exactly.
And that is the thing about trauma. You know, I've done a lot of work on myself, if I'm being honest, over the last few years. You know, I've done a lot of CBT. I actually feel like people should do CBT. Like, you know, you go up for your annual, you know, doctor's checkup and medical. That's the way CBT should be treated. But I had to do that work on myself, and it took quite a few years really to kind of get over it. But it's important that we do all talk about it on an open forum. You know, like professionally, it's hard to talk about as well, isn't it? It's hard to talk about the fact that you might be managing a department, but you've suffered from things like depression and anxiety. But it's normal. Everyone goes through it at some point in their life, and we need to start normalizing it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think we get so stuck in our profession about you know, we're there to heal other people. We're there to, you know, look after other people. Yeah. And it's so easy, and it's across the board, and, you know, in healthcare, it's so easy for us to neglect ourselves in that equation. Basically, you know, it's all about give, right?
Yeah.
So Trousseau, it was doing amazingly well, and
Yeah,
you know, you were really enjoying it. So tell us about, how did you then come back to pharmacy? What happened in that period?
So I guess I'd been straddling both spheres even while I was working within Trousseau, if I'm being honest, because with any small business, I was locuming the whole time, because with any small business, you know, especially at the start, your outgoings are definitely big, you know, bigger than your incomings. I'd done my first round of funding, hadn't quite got to the next stage. The business really diversified in the 5 years I was doing it solo. You know, we went from being kind of just, you know, these were like these one-off limited pieces, to then having a prep collection, launching things on a website, doing trade shows. I then kind of realized actually my forte was more kind of within styling and empowerment. I had a really good customer retention rate, and when I started looking at why it was, and my brides, that was a big thing that I concentrated on, was bridal wear and bridal jewelry. But it was about building your trousseau. So it was a collection. It wasn't just things like, you know, looking like a Christmas tree on your wedding day and then never wearing that jewelry again. It was about, you know, building timeless pieces into your collection and across all your different, you know, wedding events that you would then wear again, and it would remind you, you know, of that period of time. And when I kind of started approaching my customers about what kept them coming back, their thing was, it was the way they felt when they bought one of my pieces, and then when they wore it and they carried that with them. So that was kind of termed the Trousseau fix. And what I began to realize is I was treating my clients how I would treat a patient. So I would almost do like a meds rec with them about their personality, what made them feel good, like how simple, how dressed up did they like to feel. And it was almost like I was dosing my jewelry up, basically, in a way that made them, you know, gave them this happy factor. And women's empowerment was always something that was a big deal for me, especially because of my story. I wanted women to feel amazing about themselves, and that's what I carried on doing. So we did diversify a lot, though, you know, I had my fingers in lots of pies at that point. But then Brexit hit. And I was at a point where we were looking to kind of branch out into Europe at that point, and I'd invested a lot of money into it. And then I almost had to take a step back from it, because I'd invested this money, but it wasn't going anywhere, because we'd managed to get, you know, stocked in places like Singapore and LA and yeah. LA, I'll talk about another time, but it's why you should always talk to somebody on the table next to you. That's how I ended up getting stocked on Rodeo Drive.
Amazing.
But it's, you know, I kind of got to this stage where I realized I couldn't have it all. And I was putting a lot of time into Trousseau, but I wasn't reaping the rewards I want from it. And to be honest, it was leaving me in quite a difficult financial position. So I went back to locuming full time in hospital. And this job came, and I wasn't enjoying it in London, if I'm being honest, because when you go from owning your own business, you know, making high level decisions every day, to kind of start sitting in a dispensary or working with people in areas where you know that there's problems. And I think, if I'm being honest, I was probably a bit of a troublesome locum, because I'd go in and I'd be like, but this isn't working, so why can't we just do this and this to change it? And, you know, I feel it on the other side. Everyone's time poor. You can't fix everything. It's the way life is in the NHS. But it's the way I function. You know, I see something's broken. That is my thing. I want to fix it. How do I make it better? So I wasn't feeling satisfied. And I think I'd become very disillusioned with London life. Like, Trousseau had taken me on this kind of tangent where, you know, it was very much an Instagram heavy life. I did an immense amount of networking. I loved it. I love people, you know, I love that part of my job. But, you know, being part of members networks and doing all these great, amazing things. But somewhere in that, I had really lost myself, and I'd lost, you know, that girl who had created that business in her parents' bedroom, and that passion had really waned, if I'm being honest, because I'd stopped following my mission, and we've talked about that as well, and I stopped feeling authentic in what I was doing. I stopped feeling like I was making a business, and you know, the accountant's bill at the end of the year was the bottom line, is what I felt like. And that took a lot of fun out of the business for me, because I've never been money orientated. That wasn't why I'd set this business up. So I decided to take a break. I was only meant to come up here for 3 months. Like I told you, I had this calling. I knew this was the place I was meant to be. And I came into a job here, and I just kind of fell in love with living up here, if I'm being honest. The hospital I work in, I call it my CGH family in a certain way, but it really does feel like that. You know, you fight, you argue, you fall out with people, and then you come back together, much like a family does. And yeah, like I think I just fell in love with the people up here, but I also fell in love with living in nature. I was desperately looking to find myself again, and I found myself kind of just silencing the rest of my life around me a little bit, but also just finding real purpose again, if I'm being honest. The great thing about working in places like this, in rural settings, is if you put the effort in, you can really, really make a difference. And you don't just make a difference to the hospital, you make a difference to the community around you. And that's not going to happen overnight. You know, they're long-term projects, but you feel like you're part of the bigger tapestry, and you're an active member of that. And that is something that made me then apply for the job. And that was less than 7 weeks after I'd got here. So again, when I moved up here, you know, people were like, "You're crazy. Why are you going from London to all the way there? Like, you're..." And I was like, "I don't know. I just need to go there." And my friends are quite used to it. I make quite weird, kind of bold decisions. But yeah, I kind of knew I would figure things out when I got up here. And then once I got up here, I knew I was meant to stay. So that's what I did.
You know, I think you've hit something really important, which is, and we talk about this a lot on this show, and I talk about it a lot in my Facebook community and on posts and stuff. But you know, it's really about taking that action, right? And you know, and following your gut instinct, but taking the action, because what's the worst that can happen, right? Yeah. You know, what is the worst that can happen? You could have gone up there and realized 3 months down the line, you know what, it's not right for me. Okay, well, I'll change it, you know? And I think we, you know, obviously someone like me with 2 young kids is not going to pack up and leave and come all the way up to the Highlands, as much as I would love to.
I mean, there's jobs going, Kamal, so
you know, as much as, yeah, you know, I'd love to come up to the Highlands. But, you know, it's for some of us, it's not so easy, right? But that said, you know, it doesn't have to be moving across the entire country, right? It can be any role, any job, you know, in any industry, actually, you know, because and that's the thing that I think you've done so well, and you've really learned from all of those experiences, and you're now bringing that incredible experience that you had of entrepreneurship to your role, which,
well, I think there's so many transferable skills you kind of learn. So one of the challenges of being in a rural area is we really struggle to recruit, we really struggle to retain staff, and it's having people with the right skill mix to kind of bring them up here. So when we're a vaccine holding center, and when that decision was made, we didn't have enough staff to run it. So by chance, I got given the number of Jewellery is one of the nuclear plants up here, but they do a lot of community work. One of the chairmen that does community work there. And I was like, you know how you're saying, just take action. I was just like, I'll take this call. I don't know what's going to happen, but something could, you know, whatever way they can help, let's at least explore it. And we ended up then securing volunteers from them, which worked really well because they are all very, as pharmacists, we're all very SOP led. And because of how nuclear plants work, they all work kind of under very strict SOPs. So they could pick, I knew if we were asking them to do very simple pack downs, they would be able to do it. And they did. They've done an incredible job. This has been their last week with us, but we've had, incredible support from them over the last 4 months where they've come in and they've taken over what pharmacy support workers would do. But if I hadn't taken that call, if I hadn't taken the chance, we wouldn't have been able to be a vaccine holding center. We wouldn't have been able to get this vaccine out to the community around us. And yeah, just taking chances and exploring things is really, really important, even day to day in our careers, right?
Yeah, totally. So I would love for you to share your top 3 learnings, whatever those, or whatever learnings I would love for you to share what if you, looking back on your career and looking back at the things that you've done, what would you say to someone listening to this who's thinking, you know what, I've got a creative streak, I really love doing something that's creative, but I don't know how to get into it. What would you say to them?
So I guess number 1 is find your niche, like in terms of your creative streak, because we're all special in our own ways. I know that sounds a bit bougie to say, but it's true, we are. So whatever you do creatively, there is going to be something that, and keep exploring your talents, keep trying different things, but there's going to be something that is very unique to you. So what way can you monetize it? Start thinking about where is there a gap in the market? And to be honest, think about how can you help people? Because if that's your focus, your focus is, I could have made the jewelry just about, I just want to make pretty pieces of jewelry. That wasn't the end goal. So think about how you're going to help people, because that will really, that is going to be the thing that gives you drive at the end of the day to keep pushing on with it. So that's number 1. Number 2 is find ways to always be building your skill set. So, especially if you're straddling 2 careers, don't forget the other one, because you never know when you're going to need it. And don't treat that like a part-time job either. The reason I always had locum opportunities is because when I went and did locums, I would always add value. So, I'd clear up their shelves, I'd reorganize their to follows, whatever it was, but it meant that people would keep rebooking me. So think about whatever you're doing, keep building your career, and keep building your skill set, but think about just carry on with your actual whatever your foundation career is. Make sure that you're still keeping your skills up to date. And I think the third thing is surround yourself with the right people. That's really, I think that is actually the most important thing. The people you spend time with, the voices you listen to, they become your voice. So surround yourself with the people that are, boosting you, lifting you up day to day, but also that enable you to do your job well. So, I'm lucky. I got to build my team from scratch up here, and I'm surrounded by an incredible team. The technicians and the support workers I have are absolutely amazing. I wouldn't be able to do my job without them. But they're the right people for me, because I know they will tell me if I'm doing something wrong as well. We create an environment where they have a voice, which is really important as well. But outside of work, I and especially being in a lockdown, I think a lot of people have realized this. We had a lot of friends, right, that were kind of like, they're really, we might have known them for 15 years, but they were really just our acquaintances. That they weren't true friendships. Or we had professional relationships with people that weren't necessarily good for us. So surround yourself with the right voices and the things that enable you to focus on the good.
I think those are such important pieces of advice, being able to really, explore what your niche is, what you really love doing, right? And surrounding yourself with those people, keeping your hand in the, and actually the key message there is about doing the best at everything that you're doing, right? Treat it like it's a proper job, right? Don't just go in there and do the thing and walk out at the end of the day. really, really add value to whatever you're doing. I think there's such important pieces of advice. I can't thank you enough, Urvi, for coming on today's show and sharing your story, because I just think you've been so open and vulnerable about everything that you've experienced. And I really appreciate you for doing that and sharing that, because I think so many more people need to hear your story of how you've, been able to successfully amalgamate your two careers and be successful at both of them. And that's just so inspiring. I'm really inspired by you, for sure.
Oh, thank you. That's really nice. Nice to hear. I think it's what we talked about, mission. Like, have a mission. So know what your calling is in life. I think that's really important. I think it doesn't matter whether I do pharmacy or I do fashion. My thing is, I love people and I love helping people. And that is the thing that counts. So really, I think as well, if there's people listening to this that are looking to move careers, they're looking to make changes, think about your whys in life. Think about what you were made to do. Why were you put on this earth? What were you meant to do? Because that is the thing that will keep you going and keep you growing, because that is really the most important thing. The learning never stops. We're 15 odd years into our careers, aren't we? Maybe even more.
Yeah,
shouldn't give away my age, but there isn't a day where I don't learn about a new drug or I don't learn something new professionally, and that's really important. Don't get stagnant in what you're doing. Keep growing. That's really important.
Thank you so much, Urvi. I really appreciate your time. And I know that you've got one last thing that you wanted to share with people that are watching this, because I believe you've got some vacancies up there.
We do. So if you're not already, please follow my account, City Girl Blether, which I think Kamal has copied into a few accounts. So it'll give you a little bit of a glimpse onto what life in the Highlands is like, the amazing views we have. You'll get definitely more amazing views from this weekend, because I'm moving house right onto a beach cottage.
Nice.
Yep, and that is the quality of life you can have up here. But we've got locuming opportunities up here at the moment, both for technicians and pharmacists, and we've also got some permanent positions that we can really help you mold around what you want to do, perhaps. So if you're interested, if something sounds interesting, please drop me a message on Instagram or Facebook, wherever, and I'll get back to you. And if the Highlands life is for you, I'd definitely love to invite you up here.
Oh, thank you so much, Urvi. I hope that you continue to thrive up there, and you continue to do your amazing work, and that Trousseau continues to thrive as well. So thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. See you.
Bye. That was Urvi. She was so amazing. I have learned so much from speaking to her, and just her experiences of going through the journey of being a pharmacist and going to fashion and coming back to pharmacy. I hope that you found that useful, and I hope that you got lots out of today's live. I am going to be back next week, 8 o'clock Wednesday, when I'm going to be talking about conscious leadership with an inspirational leader who I feel really, really blessed to know. You're going to have to watch to see who that is. So please do join us next week, 8 o'clock Wednesday, live at 8 p.m. every single Wednesday. Happy Healthcare Professionals live show. And of course, if you're stuck on your career and you don't know which direction to take, and you really need some help, then reach out to me. I will be more than happy to support you and help you in whatever way that I can. So take care and have a great week, and I shall see you next week. Bye all.